Hi, Kara from Health, Home, and Happiness here. Today we are going to can some ground beef. I'm going to show you, we're going to use the pressure canner, which is back on my stove right there. I'm going to show you how simple it is to can. We're just going to do salted ground beef, but you could also add taco seasoning or any other kind of seasoning.
Hey, Mom.
Thank you, baby. That you would like to. And I do it, you can either do it on the stovetop for browning it, or you can do it right in your Instant Pot. So I just use my Instant Pot saute mode, and we're going to lightly brown it. And I have my helper here. What's your name?
Abigail.
Abigail's here to help me today. Sometimes you'll see people called cold pack ground beef, but I like to brown it before I pack it into the canning jars. So today we're going to lightly brown it. It doesn't have to be cooked all the way through, but you do want to brown it and break up the chunks so that it's kind of the consistency that you want it to come out when you're done canning it. And I find this is super helpful for having on hand for if we make our keto lasagna, if we make our cheeseburger casserole.
Or Hannah.
Or Hannah.
Hannah made it.
And Hannah likes to make it for chili. We add it to chili. We add it for taco night. It's just super easy to have on hand. And soup. And if you'll remember in our other video, so you can fit, this is a quart jar, you can fit 2 pounds in a quart jar, or this is a pint jar. 1 pound of meat goes into a pint jar. So that's just kind of how you can have an idea of how much you're gonna make and can, and how much will be your finished product. I like to do 6 pounds at a time. And this is butcher box beef. You'll find I got these, I think they call it like a bundle, or I think they call it a bundle or like a flight. It's probably not a flight of beef. And it ends up working out to $5 or $6 a pound. And so whenever they have that deal, and I'll show you all my butcher box deals if you click the link below. But whenever they have that deal, I load up on quite a bit of beef. And then we... Thank you, baby. And then we can it from there. So I like to use my Instant Pot just with the saute feature, which is preheating just from the bottom. I mean, no touching. Because this doesn't get hot, and I a lot of times have little helpers in my kitchen. So we're gonna preheat this to saute.
My kitchen.
There's your kitchen. We're gonna preheat this to saute, and then the highest setting. And I'm gonna put 6 pounds of ground beef in here to brown. So I usually do 6 pounds at a time because it fits well in my Instant Pot, and then I can do either 3 quarts, 6 pints, or a combination of that. And then you just want to cook it to the longer, when you pressure can it, you want to pressure can it to the longer amount of time. So if you only do pints, you only have to do pint time. But if you're using quarts and pints, you want to pressure can it all to the pint time. So we have that. I'm going to add just 2 tablespoons of sea salt. Mommy, do it. As our meat is browning, we're gonna put water in our canner to start preheating our canner and also preheating the jars. As our beef continues to brown, we're gonna keep stirring it from the bottom, and we're gonna set out our canning funnel and everything else we need for the next step. So we have our meat all browned. I'm gonna break it up a little bit more. This isn't a safety thing. This is just, you wanna break it up to be your desired texture. And we're gonna keep all this liquid in here because we're gonna use that liquid in our jars. And as we were browning this, we preheated our jars in here. So you can also preheat your jars in the dishwasher. That's just plenty fine. This isn't to sterilize them. It is to keep it from having shock. So you want hot food to go in hot jars in a hot canner. So we have a little bit of water down at the bottom, and we put our jars in just until they're hot. And then we'll bring them over here and just set them on a dish rag to fill them. So while we were waiting for our jars to heat up, we'll put this back on so the canner can stay hot. While we were waiting for our jars to heat up, we went ahead and got everything else out. So I just have lids that go on the jars. You want to use new lids. I do prefer name brand. There's some off brands right now for canning stuff, and I haven't found them to work as well. So I usually get either Ball or Kerr, which are pretty much, I think they're the same company. So new lids, and then I just wash them like kitchen clean. You don't need to boil them, you don't need to preheat them. And then we have our canning funnel, which can get everything in there without spilling all over the place. And then I like to use a ladle. You can also use your wooden spoon is just fine. We're gonna fill our jars leaving 1 inch of headspace, which is just the shoulder of the jar. And if you don't have enough liquid, like if too much of your liquid has boiled off, you can boil some filtered water, and we can use that to get up to the headspace required. And so you'll see it's coming out a little bit there. You can use your spoon to push it to pack it down. Make sure all the air bubbles are out. And I like to fill it all up with meat, and then we'll get the liquid up to the correct amount of headspace. You can see I put a little bit too much in this one. So we're gonna wipe these rims when we're all done before we put the lids on. So there's still a little bit left. I could put this in a little 1/2 pint jar, which I'm gonna do. So here's my little 1/2 pint jar. I just ran it under hot water to heat it up. And you'll find it's pretty accurate. The 1 pound is 1 pint. So this should be about 1/2 pound of ground beef. But as you can see, this was a little bit off, which is just fine. It means we get more out of it. You can see how there's quite a bit of liquid in here, and then this one's a little bit more dry. So the USDA, lots of people will can it just like this, and in my opinion, it's just fine. But the USDA wants you to fill it up to here with hot liquid. So we're just gonna you can use a little beef broth if you want, or you can use just water and hot water and fill that up. And then we're just gonna adjust our jars a little bit to make sure the top 1 inch is empty, which is called headspace. And we're gonna wipe our rims to make sure they seal well. So remember, this doesn't have to be sterile. This is just tap water on my paper towel, because we're not sterile right now. What we're gonna do is make it all sterile in the pressure canner. So this is just kitchen clean. This is what we want. Put our lids on. These are new. These are old. So you can reuse your rings. You're supposed to, lots of people do, but you're supposed to use new, you're supposed to use new lids. And I didn't get out enough wide mouth lids, so I will wash a couple more. 2 more, we'll just wash them off real quick. And then we're gonna put our rings on, and these are gonna be, it's called finger tight, but it's like, you're not gonna really wanna wrench down on it, but also you don't want it to be loose. So finger tight, and these are hot, so a lot of times you'll wanna use this. I think the more you've been in the kitchen, the less your hands are bothered by hot things. You can mix and match these, and we're gonna process all of these in, our preheated canner for 90 minutes, because even though this doesn't have to be processed for 90 minutes, quarts do. And so you're gonna see that I'm gonna use 15 pounds of pressure because I'm at a high elevation, but most of the time you'll use 10 pounds of pressure if you're at sea level, so check your elevation for. So you'll check your elevation. If you live at high elevation, you have to process at a higher pressure. So this is my canner that we've been heating up. I like to use the middle burner just because it's not right against either the back or the front. Little toddler hands can't reach it easily, but then she also knows to stay away from this when it's hot. So with your canner, There's a couple different versions. So this is your vent pipe. The rubber right here, this is hot because it's been preheating, is your emergency release. So you want your emergency release to be in the back. So if it if it accidentally gets too hot and explodes, you want it to not explode out into the room, but to the back towards the wall. I've never had that happen. I was like terrified of my pressure canner for a long time, or pressure canners in general, but they're super easy. They're you'll see how straightforward this process is. And then this will say when it's come to pressure. So we're gonna take this off. We have, my canner instructions say to have about 2 inches of water in there. So I have about 2 inches. It's not like water bath canning where you want to cover your jars with hot water. We're just having enough water in there that it can make pressure, it can make steam. I add a little bit of cream of tartar to my water because my water is super hard, and that keeps the hard water from building up on the jars. So I just use like a 1/4 teaspoon, a couple shakes is all I use. Then we're gonna put our jars in our canner. So you want them about evenly in there. We're gonna put our lid on. So you just gotta kind of adjust it. If it's not working, then it's probably flipped around and you need to turn it around. And now we're gonna turn it on. It'll depend on your stove. So I turn mine on high on this burner. It's a pretty small burner. So it likes to be on high, and you'll kind of get to know your individual canner and your individual burners. And we're gonna let it go until steam has come out of here. So you can see a little water coming out, but it's not steam yet. But we want steam to come out of there for 10 minutes. And so that clears out any residual air that's in there, so it's all full of steam. And then we'll put this on. So you want to leave, you have a weight. You want to leave your weight off until this is cleared for 10 minutes. So we'll just leave this. It'll take about 10 or 15 minutes because we already preheated it. So the water down here is hot, but it's all got to come up to temperature to bring it up to a steam. It'll take about 10 or 15 minutes until steam starts coming out of there. So it's canning is a lot of time that's not really hands-on. It's like you can walk away from it, but I find it works super well when in the evenings when I'm either making dinner, helping kids with homework, kids are coming in and out, neighborhood kids are coming in and out. It's like, I need to be around, I can't leave, but I need to be around the house, I can't leave, but I find it super convenient. Once you get the process and you're used to it and you sort of know how to time stuff, it's like second nature to just put a whole batch in your canner after groceries or while you're doing something else. So now you can see that the steam is coming out of that vent pipe right now, so we're going to let it vent for 10 minutes. Oh, thank you. Okay, so this just popped up and we still have time for this needs to vent, and that's just fine. That can pop up. So now this has been venting for 10 minutes. We're gonna put our weight on. And now, before we still aren't starting our 90-minute timer, we need to get this up to our desired pressure, which for me is 15. For most people, if you're closer to sea level, it's gonna be 10. So I'm gonna leave this on high. So I'm gonna leave the burner on high, but all we did after it had been venting for 10 minutes is put our weight on.
No, put that.
And you're actually...
No, touch that.
Yeah, it's hot, huh?
No, touch that.
It's hot. And so this is another thing where you'll get to know your canner and you'll get to know what it sounds like when it's at pressure or getting up to the correct pressure. But for right now, we're just gonna let this and we'll watch our gauge. So do you hear that? It's right at 15. So you'll get to know this on your canner. All canners are a little different. All stoves are a little different. And then I know for this burner that if I turn it down to 3, it'll stay right at 15. It's okay if it goes a little bit above. You just want to hold it at 15 degrees or 15 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer. And as you start doing this, you're gonna kind of have to watch it. Because I've been doing this for so long, I know what it sounds like. And so it's gonna keep making this sound, which is the correct pressure for my altitude. And I'll be able to hear it if it stops making that sound and go correct the burner. But I know that this canner on this burner, 3, sometimes 3.5, is exactly what I need to keep the pressure right at 15. So we're gonna leave this for 90 minutes. Okay, so our timer just went off. We're not gonna do anything on our canner now. You just leave it exactly where it is, and we're just gonna turn our burner off and let it depressurize. So this is our weight. We're gonna keep our weight on. It still is gonna hold pressure. You're gonna see this dial go down slowly. We're gonna wait until it has naturally depressurized, and you'll know that it has depressurized because this valve will be down again. So this is up, showing that it has pressure, and we're just gonna, you can step away from it, you can leave your house, whatever, and we'll come back in about an hour or 2 when this has completely depressurized. Okay, so you can see now how it's down at 0, but this is still up, so we want to wait until this little belly button is all the way down before we take our weight off. So it'll just be like 5 more minutes, you'll hear it click, and then it'll be ready to take the weight off. So now our little belly button went down, the pressure gauge, and so you can take your weight off, and you'll hear it depressurize a little bit more. And then you can let this just sit. I know it's a lot of just letting sit at the end. So there's a bunch of steps. You're gonna wanna let this sit for like a few more minutes to finish, because it's really hot in there still. So since it was pressurized, it means it's above boiling temperature. So we'll let this sit like 5 more minutes, and then we can open it up and unload our jars. I just put them right onto a folded dish towel when I unload them. You can use either a jar lifter, or you can use just like a another dish towel to get your jars out, because they're going to be still very hot. There it is. Okay, so now it has sat for a few minutes, and we have our jar lifter here. You want to open this so the steam goes away from you. So open it towards the back. Whoa. And then these, you'll see them when I take them out, but they're still going to be boiling on the inside, and that's okay. You can leave it either like this overnight, or you can move them over here. You don't want to leave your lid on overnight though, because it gets something sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it gets something called flat sour, which means, it doesn't mean it's unsafe. It just means that the taste is a little bit off. So I'm going to do that so I can get it around the microwave. And so we just put them here, and can you see how they're still bubbling when I take them out? And we'll start hearing them ping, which means the lids are gonna go down. Don't touch it. In a couple hours. And so we'll check in the morning and make sure they are all sealed. If they haven't sealed, you need to move it into the fridge and use it within a week. But most likely we are done. So here's our finished ground beef. You can still see the bubbles coming up, and they're just fine. It will be all ready to store tomorrow, but for right now we just, oh, did you hear that one just pop? That popped down. This is sourdough starter. I will show you how I make sourdough for the kids another video. But this is our ground beef. If you wanted to, you could do another.
I hear it pop.
Did you hear it pop?
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you can do another batch in your canner right now. But we're just gonna leave these alone overnight, and then we'll check and make sure that they've all sealed. We'll take the rings off to store them, and they'll be ready to label and store. And you can see how the glass is nice and clear, because we added that cream of tartar to the water down in the bottom of the canner. And so if your glasses are a little bit cloudy or a little bit of the meat leaked out, like the meat juice leaked out, then tomorrow you can go ahead and just rinse them off before you store them.